Welcome to Payoff Pitch Live. I'm Mike Calabrese. Joined, easy for me to say, by Sean Zerillo, and we're going to talk the full slate in the bigs here on Monday. We also have Grant Neiffer to give us a little home run magic for his home run props on the Monday card. But before we jump into that, Sean, I want to frame a little bit about what's happened in Major League Baseball here in the first month of the season. We have a handful of disappointing teams. And you can chalk that up to injuries. You could say it's scheduling quirks. You could say, the lineups, they've had some slow starts. But at some point, you have to jam down on the panic button. So let's frame this in terms of preseason expectations and win totals with three teams in particular. The Braves were predicted to win the NL East. They had the second highest win total in the NL at 93.5. They're 12 and 15 out of the gate. Yes, they pulled out of that nosedive to start the season, but they're still last in the NL East. Then you have the Orioles, 86.5 on their win total in the preseason. They're off to a 10 and 17 start. And then we'll close with the Minnesota Twins, 84.5 in terms of their win total, but they were predicted to win the AL Central. They're off to a 12 and 16 start. So, of these three teams, who are you buying stock in as of today that they can get it turned around and headed in the right direction?
I mean, it's boring, but it's the Braves of the three teams. They are by far the most built to continue to move forward. The Orioles ran out of pitching. That's why they've struggled. The Twins have no offense. That's why they've struggled. They have multiple guys on the IL right now. Royce Lewis making his annual IL appearance, but then also Willie Castro, Matt Wallner, who hits a lot of bombs. And they had somebody else go down yesterday. So the Twins kind of Luke Keyshaw, who came up and put together some good at bats, stole a bunch of bases right when he came up, got to the majors very quickly. He was in the same draft as Nick Kurtz. I believe he was a second round pick or a comp round pick. So Keyshaw got to the majors very quickly and then got hurt right away. So the Twins seem to have very bad luck in terms of keeping their position players healthy. Carlos Correa also dealt with injuries last year, has dealt with injuries in the latter part of his career, the Giants contract that fell through, etc. Correa not hitting this year, and I think he remains a significant concern going forward. So largely the Twins season kind of hinges on their pitching and the quality of their pitching, bringing up guys like Zebby Matthews, hoping they give them good contributions. And they still do have one of the best bullpens in baseball. So the Twins could potentially pitch their way back into contention in a division that is very weak. Baltimore does not have that option. They're going to have to slug their way back in the American League East. And frankly, their offense is underachieving right now. And they've really just never figured out the appropriate mix of these position players, finding at bats for guys like Keston Kjerstad. But then they still have Kobe Mayo in the minors. They brought up Jackson Holiday finally, but still giving at bats to Ramon Urias. It's not as nasty of an offense as it should be. Adley really struggled in the second half of last year. It's kind of carried over into this year. So overall, Baltimore does not have the pitching depth to get themselves back into contention in the American League. I think they are probably staring down a very long and disappointing season. The Twins probably as well. They just have a better chance because their division is so weak. But Atlanta continues to be the team I would buy from a futures perspective, make the playoffs, win the World Series at this point. The Dodgers lineup is underachieving right now, but the Dodgers rotation is getting extremely banged up. Snell going down, Glasnow going down yesterday. Roki Sasaki still does not look like anything that he was advertised to be in his rookie year. So overall, the Dodgers pitching is back kind of to where it was last year in terms of being a significant concern. They could still add pieces during the season, but I think you do have to downgrade the Dodgers relative to where we have them in the preseason. And when it comes to the playoffs, when the Braves presumably have Strider and Acuna back and a full complement of healthy players on their roster, they do remain the biggest threat for me in terms of upsetting the Dodgers come playoff time. The Cubs look great. The rest of the NL West looks great, but in the end, I still expect it to be the Braves and Dodgers, and I think could be a good buy point on the Braves.
All right, Sean, let's get into your best bet here on Monday. You like the over between the Mets and the Nationals. This is their last game in the four-game set. The Mets basically have been an ATM when it comes to their unders this year, one of the strongest under teams of the 2025 season. Two-thirds of their games have finished under the closing total, and that's across 28 games at this point. So it's been a pretty safe trend to follow. But they're coming off a beer league softball game on Sunday against the Nats, an 8-7 loss, and now they close the series against Trevor Williams. And basically, teams have been getting on with high frequency against him this year, evidenced by his 1.58 whip. Do you think they run him off in a high scoring game here?
So overall, I think these teams just know each other's bullpens really well. I talked about it a lot earlier in the year, but the Mets advanced scouting and their ability to find relievers in opposing bullpens that they can blow up in any individual series seems to be a thing that is carried over into this year. The Nationals, though, have a good offense. And since Adrian Abrams came back, they are hitting better offensively overall. But the two things that really got me to the over here are the weather and the umpire. Because I know these offenses are good. I know the Nationals bullpen is among the worst in the league. I'm actually kind of higher than market on Griffin Canning. I bet on him a few times this year. I'm lower than market, probably on Trevor Williams, who both of these guys have a sub 4 expected ERA. They're both, pitching to good results thus far this year, but both have below average strikeout minus walk rates. And projections expect both to regress into the 4s for their expected FIPS going forward. So even though both have performed well, even though there's signs in Griffin Canning's profile why he's performing well, ground ball rate is up 13% this year relative to his career average because, as I discussed last week, he changed his horizontal release points, changed on all of his pitches, completely changed the attack angle. Think about Sean Manaea last year. The Mets modifying his release point, getting the most out of him, changing his horizontal release point. They did the same thing with Canning. Ground ball rate spiked, results here to career best mark. But all of that said, the strikeout minus walk rate is still below the major league average. And as a result, he's likelier to have bad luck or worse luck than he's had so far going forward. Now, you mentioned the Mets and the unders. That's because their bullpen has been one of the best in baseball so far. This is the end of a 4-game series where both bullpens have worked reasonably, well into this series, right? They've thrown a decent number of pitchers, no off days. The Mets didn't go to Edwin Diaz yesterday because he's been a little banged up too. They're going to pull him potentially out of higher leverage situations at the moment. Guardians doing the same with Manuel Jose, by the way. So a lot of closing issues going on around the league. But all of that's to say, bullpen's a little banged up. Offense is better than league average. Starting pitchers due to regress. And then on top of that, Nationals Park, 2% better than league average on average. 7th in park factor over the last 3 years. Should play about neutral today. 75 degrees, forward and 5-mile-an-hour winds blowing out. Then the umpire, Carlos Torres, probably gets us from 9.7, 9.6 to 9.9. Because Torres' career, 2% worse strikeout minus walk rate than the league average. And he's hit overs at a 52.2% rate, which is, just over juice, right? He's just been slightly profitable, clearing that minus 110 or minus 108 average money line. But the strikeout minus walk rate, all the other stuff underlying on Torres does suggest hitter friendly. So make this total about 9.9, would bet the over 9.5 up to minus 105.
In terms of a side between the Nats and Mets, I saw that you jotted down that you were interested, potentially leaning towards the Nats at plus 145. What price point would, invite you to get involved pregame? And then if you were looking for a live bets, if they were go down 1 or 2 runs, is there a magic number where all of a sudden you want to hop in?
I don't want to bet on the Nationals live just because their bullpen's terrible. In terms of a pregame price, I think I make it close to plus 130. There's plus 145s out there. I'm probably okay betting it straight at plus 140, but I would wait to see if this gets up to plus 150 or higher before betting it. Plus 150, plus 200, they're rounder numbers. 150 is 40%. So that is literally a round number, both in terms of being the plus 150, but also in terms of the implied probability. Plus 200 is not a nice round number in terms of implied probability. The minus 233 is 70%. That's where you go from 150 to 233 is like 50 or 60% to 70%. So 200 is never like a round number per se in terms of implied probability, but there's a lot of times where money lines get up to that like 194, 195 range. And I'm like, it's very obvious that the market doesn't want to get it to 200 or it knows there will be resistance. It'll come back down because everybody likes to circle those nice round numbers. But I think plus 150, a fine number to try to wait for. We should have both A lineups here. Both teams played their B catchers yesterday. That's another like thing helping, potentially the over. Alvarez and Keibert Ruiz should both be back in there today. So, bumps it up a little bit. And A lineups just like to wait. I mean, it's a 4 p.m. start, so you can certainly wait for lineups closer to 1 p.m. and just make sure everybody's in there today.
If you tuned in for Grant Neiffer's home run props here on Monday, please hang tight because it's coming up next. And as he mentioned in our pre-recording meeting, he said some of these numbers are absolutely bananas, so can't wait to hear from Grant. Let's look at the rest of your card, though, Sean. Let's start with the Reds as a short favorite against the Cardinals. The Reds have been red hot, but that's what happens when you play Miami and Colorado in back-to-back series. They've won 4 straight. But talk to me about Nick Martinez. He was a solid option in the rotation last year, posting a 3.1 ERA through 16 starts. But his pitch mix just isn't getting it done here in the spring. Teams have 24 hits against him in his last 4 starts alone. Can he turn it around against a Cardinals lineup that leads the majors in team batting average?
Yeah, Nick Martinez is a command guy. He's not going to blow you away with stuff. And last year, as I discussed regularly, his command was some of the best in baseball. He had a walk rate down of 3%, which is where the George Kirby's and the Zach Eflins of the world are, guys with the best command in the sport. Now, this year, the location plus still very similar, 110 versus 113. The walk rate, though, has doubled from 3.2% to 7.8%. So I do think he's been a little unlucky in terms of the walk rate. Might have been a little bit lucky last year, but this year, it seems as though he's been a little bit unlucky because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, location plus ratings were closer to 100, 106, 103. This year, it's still above 110. So he should still have amongst the best command of pitchers in baseball. The strikeout rate is steady year over year. It's really just the walk rate that's gone up and the hard hit rate that's gone up about 5%. So I expect Nick Martinez to pitch better moving forward. He's got a 4.4 expected ERA right now, a 4.27 expected FIP. I think he could pitch closer to a 4 and be a league average starter the rest of the way. Andre Palante, however, a guy I bet on numerous times this season, cited the ground ball rate several times. His profile is starting to trend in the wrong direction. The velocity is down on all of Palante's pitches. His fastball's down nearly a tick compared to last year. His curveball's down 1.5 miles an hour compared to last year. And his stuff, his body ERA, his expected ERA are all going, well, the stuff is going down. The body ERA and expected ERA are going up. 5.2 body ERA, he was at 4.6 last season. 4.7 expected ERA, he was at 3.5 last season. So even though this is a guy who has a below average strikeout minus walk rate, keeps the ball on the ground ball rate of about 67%, which is very high, probably the highest in baseball. And because he keeps the ball on the ground, he does not give up homers. Career 0.78 homers per nine. But getting hit harder this year, walking a few more guys, not striking out as many guys. Overall, Palante's profile just starting to collapse. And he was already a guy who, based on the strikeout and walk numbers, was living very dangerously. If you took away anything from that, it's all due to completely implode. So Palante gives up a lot of base runners, needs the double plays to get out of them. I don't know. I mean, he's still getting the double plays, but I think he's giving up more hard hit balls beyond that too, and just giving up more walks, getting like less strikeouts, fewer strikeouts in general. This Reds offense starting to play really, really well. You know, they struggled to hit to start the season. Obviously, as you said, playing Miami, playing Colorado, you're going to score some runs. But Noelvi Marte looks like a real breakout candidate right now. He was striking out over 30% of the time last season after he came back from his PED suspension. This year, just the 12% strikeout rate. And this is a guy who ranks in the 96th percentile in sprint speed, 91st in terms of bat speed, playing in a very small offensive park. I think Noelvi Marte could be an absolute fantasy superstar the rest of this season, potentially going forward. This is a guy who was a top 100 prospect every single year for the past 5 years, 6 years, until he had the PED suspension last year. And then the moment you get suspended for PEDs, nobody cares about you anymore. Well, he's still sublimely talented and flashing those skills on the field. And if he gives the Reds another superstar, the Reds are very live in the NL Central. I mean, the Cubs look great, as we've discussed, but Justin Steele going down kind of lowers their ceiling overall. And the Reds playing above 500 right now. Disregard that run differential. Remember, they padded that thing up against the Orioles, as we discussed last week. That run differential is a little bit of a mirage, but that doesn't mean the Reds aren't playing good ball. And Terry Francona well on his way to being considered for manager of the year. So like the way the Reds are trending, but over and the Reds in this game, I added the over this morning. Take over 9 and minus 115 and the Reds up to minus 117.
Next on the card, Guardians and Twins. The question here is, who are the Guardians? Because they went 6-0 against the White Sox and the Pirates. Against the rest of the bigs, they're 9-12 straight up. They're drawing the towering Bailey Ober in this one, 6'9" frame, crazy extension. And while that helps him with his fastball, he's already given up 5 bombs off of that four-seam fastball this season. So more long balls on Monday night coming off the Guardians' bats, in your opinion?
I think so. Ober's fastball, as he said, down this year, and the expected results on it are much worse than the actual results he's given up. As you said, already given up 5 home runs. An actual 195 batting average against. The fastball has an expected batting average of 254. A 239 actual WOBA allowed, an expected WOBA of 329. So a full 100 points higher. And then year over year, strikeout or whiffs on that fastball down from 22% to 14%. Strikeout rate down from 23% to 13%. So overall, like clearly not getting the whiffs, getting hit harder, and should have been hit harder than he actually has been hit based on the underlying StatCast metrics, the batted ball data. So I think Ober definitely trending down with that fastball declining. he was only throwing 91, 92 miles an hour to begin with. Now it's sitting closer to 89, 90. Stuff plus down 98 to 94. Like overall, over, it seems like with the velocity down, he cannot be an effective pitcher just because the perceived velocity is not there. Gavin Williams, I think, making an interesting trend. So Gavin Williams is throwing his curve way more this year. His curve grades out as his best pitch, 117 stuff plus. He also has an above average slider, but he's really pressed down on the curve this season. I believe it's up from, well, his slider usage is up too, from 24% to 11%, but he's also pressing on the curve more, got it up closer to 30% in his last start. So I like the trend for Gavin Williams at the moment. I know the expected ERA is over 5. I think this is still a guy who's consolidating his pitch mix, figuring out exactly what to throw. He stopped throwing his changeup, which he was using last season. I believe he also stopped throwing his sinker. Like, he went from 5 pitches to 3 pitches, and he's throwing his best pitch as often as he can. That's about as good as you could hope for in terms of pitcher development and projecting a guy moving forward. The projection market has these guys in very similar buckets in terms of FIP projections, but I think there's a clear trend line where Williams is consolidating and going up, and Ober's losing the velocity and getting hit harder and going down. As I mentioned, Willie Castro getting hurt yesterday. This is not the Twins lineup as their best. If both of these teams were healthy, I would probably be neutral on this game. Almost certainly would not be betting it. May even favor the Twins. But with those injuries, at this price, to Lewis, Keyshaw, Castro, Matt Wallner, I make Cleveland about -130. I'd bet them up to about -120.
Next up on your card, a coin flip between the Astros and the Tigers. The Astros were shut out in back-to-back games on Friday and Saturday night against the Kansas City Royals. Now they face Jack Flaherty. He's a strikeout artist for sure, but the Astros are 5th in the AL in strikeout avoidance. Can they put it in play and run him off the bump?
Yeah, that's been the Astros thing for quite a number of years now, is just putting the ball in play, avoiding the strikeout. When George Springer first came up, they had the worst strikeout rate in baseball. And it was very much a story of, can the Astros ever be a good team if they're going to strike out this much? Then by the time they made it to the World Series, they had the lowest strikeout rate in baseball because the entire league accepted that you could strike out a bunch. And then the Astros went in the other direction and started putting the ball in play. So interesting to see the Astros still ranking, amongst the top in strikeout rate, even though they've lost guys like Bregman and Kyle Tucker, lost a lot of their significant pieces from the past several seasons. But in terms of today's matchup, Ronald Blanco, I think very fascinating, because last year he had a 2.8 ERA, but a 4.1 expected ERA. This year, he has an ERA of 5 and expected ERA of 3.6. So one of the unluckiest pitchers, or one of the luckiest pitchers in baseball last year, now one of the unluckiest this year. Now, the pitch modeling metrics, strikeout minus walk rate, everything for Blanco is still kind of below average. He is reliant on getting weak contact. Very similar to an Andre Plante, just without the ground ball rate. He's more of a fly ball weak contact pitcher. And the fly ball weak contact guys don't necessarily give up bombs at the rate that you would expect them to, because when they give up the ball in the air, it is usually weakly hit. They give up harder hit line drives, balls on the ground, etc. It's just like a different attack angle and a different way the batters, capitalize against them. That said, Flaherty also getting added rest here. That's something we've discussed a number of times. Flaherty on 5 days rest versus 4 days rest tends to be a little bit better. He needs that added rest. He really wore down in the second half of last season. His numbers right now, look very comparable to where he was in the first half of last year, which is among the number 1 or number 2 level starters. So I'm still projecting Jack Flaherty, basically where he was near the beginning of last year, giving him as much grace, as much upside as I can at the moment, not projecting that collapse, especially when he's on extra rest like he is today. That said, I still give Detroit 4 above average hitters against righties. I have Houston with 6 above average hitters against righties. Even though the Detroit has played really well this year, their offense has played really well. Projection wise, Houston still has the better offense by about 8 points in terms of WRC plus. Defense, base running, pretty comparable. Going forward, maybe in a month from now, 2 months from now, I may flip these projections and Detroit may be above Houston. But currently, I make the Astros the better offense. I make them about -120 in this game. I took them at even money, and I would bet it up to -110. Starting to get to that price target. Wouldn't really go beyond that, just because it's not a bet I love. This is more of a numbers play on Blanco against Flaherty. And, I've said it several times this season. I think the Tigers look phenomenal. They may be the best, or one of the top 3 teams in the American League. Like, their offense has really improved. AJ Hinch knows how to mix and match guys. The pitching depth is going to be a little bit of concern. come October. Who's their number 2 starter? Is it Jackson Joe by that point? Flaherty's not healthy or declining. Like, getting to the end of the year, getting to October with this roster fully healthy is going to be something to keep an eye on. But the Tigers do look like clearly the best team in the Central, and very glad to have pennant futures on them because they look very dangerous in a wide open American League.
The last play on your card here, a total between the West Sacramento Athletics and the Texas Rangers. Now, the A's and Rangers just played. 2 of those 3 games went under the closing total, but we get Patrick Corbin on the bump here for Texas. And I have a text from a former Payoff Pitch contributor, Mike Iannello, and it reads, Patrick Corbin is hot garbage. Early returns would indicate that he's off to his best start in years, but where do you come down on him and his impact on this total, which is sitting at 9.5?
Yeah, I mean, I bet it at 9.5. It's already down to 9. So if you want to bet the over, if you think Corbin sucks, you want to bet the over 9, congrats. You have an under 9.5 to play with. I already did what I was supposed to do. You could tell me Patrick Corbin sucks as much as you want to. I beat the line. So I made this 8.8, knew it would go down to 9. It went down to 9. It was just too high considering the dome is going to be closed. In Texas tonight, if you watch games in Texas, they hit about 4 or 5 balls a game. Texas's offense and the opposing offense that go all the way to the warning. You mean off the bat, right? If you watch enough baseball off the bat, you're like, that's a homer. And then it falls like 10 feet short of the warning track. And you're like, this park just kills home run balls. It really does when that roof is closed versus open. Globe Life Park, it knocks every single fly ball down. I could not imagine being a guy like Jake Berger and getting traded there and going from, Miami, where that park is ginormous and plays ginormous, to a visually, aesthetically smaller park and seeing the ball fly like even less far for some reason because there's no air blowing through there. Miami has like the open ends. Texas is completely closed off. So yeah, it's got to be frustrating as a hitter. Jock Peterson has really struggled thus far. But to get to Patrick Corbin, he's throwing a cutter way more than he's ever thrown it. He introduced the cutter last season about 20% of the time, up to 25% this year. The Rangers said, and last year, somebody said to him, hey, your fastball sucks, your sinker sucks, stop throwing those so much. So he did. He's throwing them less combined than he ever has this year. I think 20%, 30% of the time combined. Last year, he was closer to 50% on those 2 pitches. Like, stop throwing your shitty pitches that often. You're going to have better results. Cutter up this year. His slider, which has always been his best pitch, is not at a career high rate, but at one of the higher rates it's been in the past 4 or 5 years, one of the higher rates it's been since he left Arizona. Now, strikeout minus walk rate, still down relative to last year, but the hard hit rate is also down. And that's the thing, is he's pitching to contact more. And in a park that is going to suppress fly balls for being home runs, those cutters are going to lead to more weakly hit fly balls, weakly hit ground balls, and getting more outs. Now, Texas too, Seager on the IL, Josh Young got hurt yesterday, probably going to be on the IL. This is a declined Rangers offense from what it could be at full health. They've also struggled drastically this season. 87 WRC plus on the year. They're 26th. The A's offense has been great, and they are probably as good as they should be right now, adding Kurtz to the mix. Like, this is a very deep, very dangerous lineup. The bullpen, though, I think a little bit better than we expect. My biggest concern here is actually the bullpen behind Patrick Corbin, because the Rangers threw their A relievers back-to-back days, or 3 of the past 4 days, I should say, in San Francisco. So the A relievers for Texas will not be available tonight behind Corbin. In a tight, close, competitive game, 1-run game, you will not see the Rangers' best relievers, and that gives me a little pause. So maybe a live over. If Corbin pitches well early, get a 2-2 game through 5, live total sitting at 8.5, something like that. Maybe a live over 8.5 with the under 9.5, and we could try to middle it on 9, considering the declining or the quality of the A's bullpen, or the Rangers bullpen tonight should not be nearly what it is when their best relievers are going. But yeah, under, and wouldn't bet the 9.5 past minus 117 if it comes back up there. But as I said, a live over could actually be an interesting target here as well. I know with Patrick Corbin starting, you probably want to have an over on the pregame, but if he pitches well early, I actually think the pitchers coming in behind him may not be particularly effective.
As we know, chicks dig the long ball, which means it's time to intro Grant Neiffer into our Monday episode. He's going to give you all of his best dinger picks here. Hopefully we can hit some of these long shots because, as Grant said, before we got into the recording, there's just some mispriced players all over, scattered across this market on Monday. I guess that's my opening question for you, Grant. Can you explain why some of these guys are going off at, 75, 80% higher than you expected?
I have no idea. I literally can't explain it. I just hammered the numbers, and we'll get to the game that has a bunch of mispricing after I give you out a little long shot parlay going over on FanDuel, getting about 200 to 1 odds with a 30% boost. So let's just get right into it. Your dong sitting at plus 360 over at FanDuel. Just a little bit too high of a number. Flaherty isn't a bad pitcher, but even though last year he was decent against lefties, prior years has been much worse. Grades out as an above average matchup for lefty power. So 360 for your dong seems a little bit too high. I know he's been bad this season, but the bat swing speed has been good. All the underlying numbers have shown that he should have more than his 3 home runs on the season so far. So I'm rolling with that. Brent Rooker, I know you just talked about Corbin maybe being slightly better this year. We know you talked about Rangers Stadium being a little bit worse for fly balls and that they're not going to leave the yard. Rooker's good. Rooker's really good. Rooker has a ton of power. He was hitting bombs over in Oakland last year, and he's hitting bombs all over the place this season. Getting his odds around plus 360. I don't care how much better Corbin has looked this year. He's still Patrick Corbin. He's still giving up tons of bombs to righties. He's going to all season long. So I like him at 3 plus 320, throwing him in there. And then lastly, Jazz. And this is the game where I love so many home run bets, specifically on lefties for some reason. I don't know what's going on with the algorithms, but Jazz, I got it plus 700 over on FanDuel. I actually got it at plus 850 over at Bally's. I have no idea what the pricing is going on in this game. Both pitchers, not very good versus lefties. They're not horrific, but they're not good. The weather over there, winds blowing out a little bit, temps in the mid 70s. Nothing about this matchup is bad, but you just have some horrible pricing for lefties. Grisham, I got it plus 600 over there today. Rice, I got it plus 650 over there. Rice has been one of the best hitters in the league so far this season. Grisham has 7 home runs. Cedric Mullins, I got it plus 870. Gunnar, I got it plus 6 or plus 700. Every single lefty, it seems like, in that entire game is horrifically mispriced. So if you're looking for some one-off bets, or if you just want to create a ridiculous same-game parlay, look into the lefty over in the Yankees-Orioles game. It's just absolutely bonkers how they're priced today, and they're going to move quite a bit in the next hour. So if you got it open, almost any single app, I have all of them overpriced by about 50% today. Any of those guys, all great, but this is the long shot parlay, 201 if you use that 30% boost. I'm out of here.
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. And if you'd like to tail some of the bets that you just heard from the episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to the podcast, whether it's here on YouTube or on your podcast feed. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in today's episode to be able to head directly there and subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow with more Major League Baseball best bets. For Sean Zerillo and Grant Neiffer, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, the Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast, and good luck with all your bets.